A morning of reflection. Malcolm Bennett sat on the edge of his sleek, minimalist bed, the golden glow of New York City's sunrise filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse. The towering skyline outside symbolized everything he had achieved, an empire built on perseverance, vision, and the unshakable belief that luxury wasn't reserved for one race or class. He ran his hand over his graying beard, a subtle sign of the years spent fighting battles in boardrooms and breaking through invisible ceilings. Today wasn't about celebrations, though. Malcolm had decided to step out of his world of tailored suits and chauffeur-driven cars to see his business through a different lens. He had always believed that a company was only as strong as the values it upheld. To test this, he had to see how those values were upheld in the daily grind of his flagship store. Preparation for a new role. Malcolm chose a simple outfit, a faded gray hoodie, loose jeans, and scuffed sneakers, clothes that wouldn't raise eyebrows in a crowded subway. He caught his reflection in the mirror, a striking contrast to the image on the cover of business magazines. His assistant, Claire, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes and sharper wit, approached with a hesitant look. "Are you sure about this, Mr. Bennett?" she asked, holding a tablet loaded with his packed schedule for the day. "I need to see it for myself." "Claire," Malcolm replied, "no reports, no pre-arranged tours, just raw, unfiltered truth." Introducing Ethan Whitaker. The Bennett Luxe flagship store was an architectural marvel, its glass facade shimmering like a jewel in the heart of Manhattan. Inside, employees bustled in tailored uniforms, and shelves displayed handbags, shoes, and accessories that cost as much as a small car. Ethan Whitaker, the store's manager, stood by the cash register, checking the time on his Rolex. A tall, clean-shaven man in his mid-40s. Ethan exuded authority but carried an air of indifference toward his staff and customers. For Ethan, this job was less about serving people and more about maintaining appearances. His demeanor shifted as Malcolm entered the store. Ethan's sharp eyes scanned the casually dressed man, his mind instantly jumping to conclusions. Not the usual clientele, he thought, his lips curling into a faint sneer. He signaled one of the sales associates to keep an eye on Malcolm. A subtle disrespect. Malcolm wandered through the store, admiring the craftsmanship of items he had personally approved. He stopped at a display of leather duffel bags, his fingers brushing the soft, premium material. "Can I help you?" Ethan asked, his voice flat. His eyes lingered on Malcolm's hoodie and sneakers, an almost imperceptible hint of disdain in his tone. "Yes, I'm looking for something functional yet elegant," Malcolm replied, his voice calm and composed. "Well?" Ethan's gaze flicked to the price tag on the bag Malcolm was holding. "These might be a bit out of budget, but we have some more affordable options in the back." Malcolm raised an eyebrow but said nothing, letting the comment hang in the air, a witness to injustice. Nearby, Kendra Matthews, the assistant manager, watched the interaction. Kendra was in her early 30s, a black woman with sharp features softened by her kind eyes. She had worked hard to rise through the ranks, but under Ethan's management, her contributions often went unrecognized. Watching her boss dismiss a customer based on appearance sent a familiar pang of frustration through her. She wanted to step in but hesitated. Ethan had made it clear in the past that disrupting the flow wasn't her role. Malcolm, noticing Kendra's conflicted expression, gave her a slight nod. It was a silent acknowledgement, a reminder that someone saw her. The purchase. Malcolm continued browsing, enduring Ethan's increasingly patronizing comments. At one point, Ethan suggested a different store might better suit Malcolm's style. Still, Malcolm remained unflappable. When he approached the register with a $10 briefcase, Ethan's mask of politeness slipped slightly. He fumbled to maintain his composure, likely calculating how someone like this could afford such a purchase. "Will that be cash or card?" Ethan asked, his tone now dripping with condescension. "Card," Malcolm replied, pulling out a sleek black card. Ethan's eyebrows shot up, but he quickly processed the transaction. As Malcolm turned to leave, Ethan muttered under his breath, "Must have hit the jackpot or something." Malcolm paused but didn't look back. He left the store, his expression calm but his mind racing. Reflection on the drive home. In the backseat of his modest rental car, Malcolm leaned back and closed his eyes. Ethan's behavior wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a larger problem, one that threatened the very integrity of his company. Malcolm resolved to address it head-on. I need to protect what I've built, he thought, gripping the steering wheel, and the people who represent it. Cliffhanger. The next morning, Ethan Whitaker received a call from the headquarters. The tone was polite but firm, asking him to appear for an urgent meeting with the CEO. Ethan hung up, puzzled and slightly nervous. As he walked back to the floor, he muttered to himself, what could this be about? In his penthouse, Malcolm stood by the window, looking out at the city with a determined expression. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Ethan Whitaker's arrival. Ethan Whitaker adjusted his tie nervously as he approached the Bennett Lux headquarters in downtown Manhattan. The gleaming skyscraper stood as a testament to power and success, a stark reminder of the empire he worked for but seldom appreciated. Ethan's confidence faltered with each step toward the elevator, replaying the curt phone call summoning him to the CEO's office. What could this be about? He murmured, wiping his sweaty palms on his pants. He'd never been called to meet Malcolm Bennett directly, nor had he even seen the man in person. Most of what Ethan knew about his boss came from magazine covers and company memos. An ambitious entrepreneur who defied odds to dominate the luxury market. Ethan hadn't thought much of him. Another rags to riches story. He'd often scoffed to his colleagues. The office of power. The elevator opened to a sprawling executive suite with panoramic views of the city. The decor was understated yet commanding, mahogany furniture, plush carpets, and walls lined with awards and accolades. At the center of it all sat Malcolm Bennett, dressed in a tailored navy suit, his eyes calm but piercing as they met Ethan's. Mr. Whitaker, Malcolm greeted, gesturing toward a chair across from his desk. His voice was steady, but there was an undertone of authority that made Ethan's throat tighten. Mr. Bennett, Ethan replied, forcing a smile. He sat down, his posture stiff, trying to gauge the purpose of this meeting. The reveal. Malcolm leaned back in his chair, studying Ethan with a quiet intensity. I understand you had an interesting day at the flagship store yesterday. He began. Ethan blinked, confused. Yesterday? I don't understand, sir. You might not recognize me, Malcolm said, his voice sharpening as he leaned forward. But I was the man in the gray hoodie you dismissed and judged yesterday. The words hit Ethan like a freight train. His face drained of color as the realization dawned. He stammered, That was you? Malcolm's silence spoke louder than any reprimand. Ethan's mind raced, replaying every dismissive remark, every condescending gesture, the accusation. Yes, that was me, Malcolm continued, his tone measured but firm. I walked into my own store, dressed like an average customer, to experience the service firsthand. What I saw, Mr. Whitaker, was deeply disappointing. Sir, Ethan started, but Malcolm raised a hand to stop him. You assumed my worth based on my appearance. You dismissed me, undermined my dignity, and, worst of all, betrayed the very values this company stands for. We are a brand that prides itself on inclusion and respect. And you failed to uphold that. Ethan's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. It wasn't personal, Mr. Bennett. I didn't know it was you. If I had, and that's the problem, Malcolm interrupted, his voice rising slightly. It shouldn't have mattered who I was. Every customer deserves respect, regardless of their appearance or background. What you displayed wasn't just poor judgment, it was prejudice. The decision. Ethan's composure crumbled. Please, Mr. Bennett, I've worked here for years. I've helped this store hit record sales. Stop, Malcolm said, his tone icy. Your performance metrics don't excuse your behavior. As of today, you are no longer an employee of Bennett Lux. The words hung in the air, final and unyielding. Ethan's face turned crimson with a mix of shock and humiliation. You're firing me? Over a misunderstanding? This isn't just about yesterday, Malcolm replied, standing up. His towering presence seemed to fill the room. I've reviewed your history, Mr. Whitaker. This isn't the first complaint about your attitude toward customers or staff, particularly those who don't fit your narrow view of what luxury should look like. Your pattern of behavior has no place in this company. Kendra's promotion. As security escorted a stunned Ethan out of the building, Malcolm called his assistant. Claire, please have Kendra Matthews come in tomorrow, he said. I want to promote her to interim manager. Claire smiled. A wise choice, sir. She's one of our best. The next day, Kendra arrived at headquarters, nervous but excited. Malcolm greeted her warmly, offering her a seat in his office. "Kendra, I was at the store yesterday," he began. "I saw how you handled yourself, even in a difficult environment. Your professionalism and quiet strength didn't go unnoticed. I'd like to promote you to interim manager of the flagship store." Kendra's eyes widened, tears of gratitude welling up. "Thank you, Mr. Bennett. I won't let you down." "I know you won't," Malcolm said, smiling. "And you won't be doing this alone. I'll be working closely with you to ensure this store becomes a model of excellence, not just in sales, but in the way we treat people." Kendra's first steps. Back at the store, Kendra wasted no time. She called a staff meeting to address the changes. Her voice was steady as she said, "This store has to reflect the values of our brand. That means respect, inclusivity, and professionalism every single day. For every single person, we're going to rebuild together." The staff, many of whom had endured Ethan's toxic leadership, responded with cautious optimism. Kendra announced plans for diversity and customer service training, setting a clear tone for the new era, foreshadowing conflict. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his apartment, his anger festering. He couldn't believe he had been dismissed so abruptly. Fueled by resentment, he began plotting his next move, determined to make Malcolm regret his decision. His phone buzzed with a notification from a lawyer advertising wrongful termination cases. Ethan smirked. "This isn't over," he muttered. Cliffhanger. Malcolm, unaware of Ethan's brewing retaliation, stood by his office window that evening, looking out over the city. For him, the decision to fire Ethan wasn't just about protecting his company's reputation, it was about ensuring his brand represented the values he'd built it on. Yet, a lingering unease settled in his chest. As the lights of the city twinkled below, he whispered to himself, "The real fight is just beginning." Kendra takes charge. The air in the Bennett Luxe flagship store was tense as Kendra Matthews, now the interim manager, addressed the team for the first time. The lingering effects of Ethan Whitaker's leadership were evident in the wary expressions and hesitant body language of the staff. Kendra stood at the front of the employee lounge, her presence calm but commanding. "First, I want to thank all of you for your hard work," she began, her voice steady. "I know the past few months haven't been easy, but we're turning the page. This store is going to become a place we can all be proud of, where customers feel respected and employees feel valued." The staff exchanged uncertain glances. Kendra smiled, her warm demeanor breaking through the tension. "Change isn't easy, but we'll tackle this together. Starting today, we'll focus on two things: respect and excellence." She announced a series of initiatives: mandatory customer service training, team building workshops, and an open-door policy for addressing concerns. To her relief, a few nods and murmurs of approval rippled through the room. It was a small step, but a step forward nonetheless. Resistance and support. As Kendra worked to implement her changes, resistance emerged from some employees loyal to Ethan. Tyler Mason, a senior sales associate and Ethan's closest ally, challenged her decisions at every turn. "Training sessions? Really?" Tyler scoffed during a staff meeting. "We don't need workshops to sell handbags." Kendra met his gaze firmly. "This isn't just about selling handbags, Tyler. It's about creating an environment where everyone, customers and staff, feels respected." Despite Tyler's pushback, Kendra found allies in Sophia Kim, a junior associate eager to learn, and Jamal Carter, a seasoned employee who had often clashed with Ethan. Together, they helped Kendra rally the team, slowly transforming the store's atmosphere. Malcolm's guidance. Malcolm visited the store regularly, offering guidance and encouragement. He met with Kendra privately in the office, where she shared her progress and challenges. "You're doing great work, Kendra," Malcolm said after one such meeting. "But remember, leadership isn't about perfection, it's about persistence." "Thank you, Mr. Bennett," Kendra replied. "It's not easy, but I can see the team starting to come around." Malcolm smiled. "That's the first step. Keep pushing. Change takes time." Ethan's retaliation begins. Meanwhile, Ethan Whitaker was far from idle. Seething over his dismissal, he reached out to a high-profile attorney known for handling controversial wrongful termination cases. Vincent Graves, a shrewd lawyer with a reputation for exploiting loopholes, saw potential in Ethan's story. "You're saying you were fired for no reason?" Graves asked during their initial consultation. "For no good reason," Ethan corrected. I was running that store better than anyone. And Bennett fired me without warning. If anything, he discriminated against me. Graves raised an eyebrow. Discriminated against you? That's a bold claim. Ethan leaned forward, his voice low and bitter. He fired me because I'm white. He wants to make his company a model of diversity, and I was just collateral damage. Graves smirked. If we spin this right, we could turn it into a media frenzy. A high-powered CEO accused of reverse discrimination? The headlines write themselves. The media storm. Within weeks, Ethan's lawsuit was filed, and the media caught wind of the story. Sensationalist headlines painted Malcolm Bennett as a corporate tyrant who prioritized political correctness over fairness. The coverage was relentless, with pundits debating whether Malcolm's actions were justified. At Bennett Luxe headquarters, Claire burst into Malcolm's office. A tablet in hand. Have you seen this? She asked. Her voice edged with panic. Malcolm scanned the headlines, his jaw tightening. So, this is how he wants to play it. This could damage the brand. Claire warned. We need a strategy. Malcolm nodded. Schedule a press conference. I'm not letting him control the narrative. Kendra in the crossfire. As the lawsuit gained traction, Kendra found herself caught in the crossfire. Customers whispered about the controversy, and some employees questioned her authority. During a team meeting, Tyler challenged her openly. How do we know you're not just a diversity hire? He sneered. The room fell silent. Kendra took a deep breath, refusing to let the insult rattle her. I was hired because I'm qualified, she said firmly, and I'm here to ensure this store becomes a place where comments like that have no place. Tyler rolled his eyes but said nothing further. After the meeting, Jamal approached Kendra. You handled that well, he said. Don't let him get to you. I won't, Kendra replied, though the weight of the scrutiny was beginning to take its toll. Malcolm's statement. At the press conference, Malcolm stood before a room packed with reporters. His tailored suit and composed demeanor projected authority, but his words carried the weight of his personal convictions. Let me be clear, he began. Bennett Luxe is a company built on respect, inclusion, and excellence. The decision to terminate Ethan Whitaker was based on his failure to uphold those values, not on his race. He paused, scanning the room. This lawsuit is an attempt to distract from the real issue, ensuring that every customer and employee is treated with dignity. We will not be intimidated, and we will not compromise our principles. The press conference was widely covered, with some outlets praising Malcolm's leadership and others questioning his motives. Public opinion remained divided, setting the stage for a deeper conflict. Cliffhanger. As Kendra closed the store one evening, she found an envelope taped to the office door. Inside was a threatening note. You're just a placeholder. This store doesn't belong to you. Kendra's hands trembled as she read the words. Her mind racing, she called Malcolm immediately, her voice steady despite the fear creeping in. We have a problem, she said. Malcolm's response was immediate. Stay calm, Kendra. I'll handle this. But as he hung up, a sense of foreboding settled over him. Ethan's retaliation was becoming more personal, and Malcolm knew the battle was far from over. The threats began. Kendra Matthews sat in her small apartment, staring at the threatening note she had found. The words, scrawled in sharp, angry letters, were etched into her mind. You're just a placeholder. This store doesn't belong to you. It wasn't just an attack on her, it was an attempt to undermine everything she was working to build at Bennett Luxe. She called Malcolm the next morning, her voice calm but resolute. I found this at the store last night, she said, sending him a photo of the note. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I think this is related to Ethan. Malcolm's voice hardened. You did the right thing by telling me. I'll have security tighten up at the store. And Kendra, if you feel unsafe at any point, let me know immediately. I'm not stepping down. Kendra replied firmly. Whoever's behind this wants me to be afraid, and I won't give them that satisfaction. Malcolm smiled at her determination, though concern lingered in his mind. I'll back you all the way. Stay strong. Transforming the store. Despite the threats, Kendra poured herself into her work. She held a team meeting to address the growing tension within the staff. Let's be honest, she began, her tone direct but empathetic. The last few weeks haven't been easy. There's a lot of noise outside these walls, but we can't let that define who we are inside them. We're a team, and we need to act like one. Sophia Kim, the junior associate, raised her hand. I've noticed customers seem more tense lately. They ask about the lawsuit and if it's true. Kendra nodded. That's expected. Here's how we handle it. We stay professional, respectful, and focused on providing the best experience possible. Let's show them what Bennett Lux stands for. Jamal Carter chimed in. We've got your back, Kendra. Let's show them what we can do. With renewed energy, the team began implementing Kendra's initiatives. Customer service training sessions became more engaging, and the store's atmosphere started to shift. Regular customers began noticing the changes, praising the staff for their professionalism and warmth. Ethan's campaign. Meanwhile, Ethan Whitaker ramped up his retaliation. His lawyer, Vincent Graves, orchestrated a media blitz, feeding the press stories that painted Ethan as a victim of corporate greed and reverse discrimination. Ethan gave interviews, his tone calculatedly remorseful. I dedicated years to that store, he told one reporter, feigning regret. I never expected to be thrown out like yesterday's trash, just because I didn't fit their new image. The interviews stoked public controversy, with some questioning Malcolm's motives and others rallying to his defense. Social media exploded with debates. Hashtags like #Justice for Ethan and #Support Malcolm trending simultaneously. The store under pressure. As the public scrutiny intensified, the flagship store became a focal point for protesters. One afternoon, a group of demonstrators gathered outside, holding signs that read, "Reverse discrimination hurts everyone," and "Stop racism against whites." Inside, customers and staff alike felt the tension. Kendra, standing by the entrance, instructed her team to remain calm. We're not engaging, she said firmly. Let security handle it. Despite her composed demeanor, Kendra couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Later that evening, as she locked up the store, she noticed a car idling across the street. Its headlights flicked off as she walked away, sending a chill down her spine. Malcolm's strategic response. Back at headquarters, Malcolm called an emergency meeting with his legal team and PR consultants. Claire opened the discussion, her tone urgent. The protests are growing, and the media isn't letting up. We need to control the narrative. Malcolm leaned forward, his expression serious. We've tried staying on the defensive. It's time to go on the offensive. I want our legal team to dig into Ethan's history, any patterns of misconduct, complaints, anything that shows why he was unfit to lead. One of the lawyers, Amanda Rivers, nodded. We'll need statements from former employees. If there's a pattern of discrimination under Ethan's management, we can turn this around. And the PR angle? Claire asked. We highlight the positive changes Kendra is making. Malcolm said. Let the results speak for themselves. A breakthrough. The following week, Amanda presented her findings. We've uncovered several complaints from former employees about Ethan, she said during a meeting with Malcolm and his team. Most were dismissed without investigation. But the patterns are damning: discrimination, favoritism, and even harassment. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. This is exactly what we need. Compile everything and prepare a counterstatement. We'll expose the truth. An unexpected turn. As Malcolm prepared to release the information, Ethan's retaliation took an unexpected turn. An anonymous source leaked a fabricated email, supposedly from Malcolm, making disparaging remarks about white employees. The media frenzy reignited, with critics demanding Malcolm's resignation. Kendra called Malcolm as soon as she saw the news. This is getting out of hand, she said. They're trying to destroy you. They won't succeed, Malcolm replied, though his voice carried the weight of the situation. The truth is on our side. Kendra's strength shines. Despite the chaos, Kendra remained focused on the store. She continued mentoring her team, helping them navigate the challenges with grace and resilience. Her efforts began paying off as the store's sales climbed and customer feedback improved dramatically. One afternoon, a longtime customer approached Kendra. I just wanted to say, the store feels different, in a good way. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. Kendra smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Thank you, that means a lot. Cliffhanger. As Kendra celebrated the store's progress, Malcolm received an unexpected visitor at headquarters. Amanda rushed into his office, holding a folder. You're going to want to see this, she said, her voice urgent. Malcolm opened the folder, his eyes scanning the contents. His expression darkened. This changes everything, he said. What is it? Amanda asked. Malcolm's voice was steady, but the fire in his eyes burned brighter than ever. Proof Ethan was behind the threats to Kendra, and more. It's time to end this. The shocking evidence. Malcolm Bennett sat in his office, reviewing the documents Amanda had brought. The folder contained damning evidence, emails, texts, and even witness accounts tying Ethan Whitaker to the threatening notes left for Kendra. More disturbing were the records of Ethan's systematic harassment of employees during his tenure as store manager, complaints that had been quietly buried or ignored. "This isn't just a workplace grievance anymore," Amanda said firmly. "This is criminal." Malcolm clenched his jaw. "We're not just defending ourselves now. We're going after him." Filing a counterclaim. The next day, Malcolm and his legal team filed a counterclaim against Ethan for defamation, harassment, and workplace misconduct. They also submitted the evidence to the authorities, prompting an official investigation into Ethan's actions. The announcement made headlines, turning the tide of public opinion. Claire, Malcolm's assistant, walked into his office, a stack of newspapers in her hands. "The press is picking up the story," she said, setting the papers on his desk. Headlines ranged from "Former Manager Accused of Harassment" to "Bennett Lux CEO Strikes Back." Malcolm nodded. "Good. Let the truth speak for itself." Kendra faces new challenges. At the flagship store, Kendra Matthews tried to maintain focus, but the fallout from the counterclaim created new tensions. Some employees were visibly shaken, and the store received an influx of curious customers eager to witness the drama firsthand. One afternoon, a reporter approached Kendra on the sales floor, camera crew in tow. "Ms. Matthews, can you comment on the allegations against Ethan Whitaker?" the reporter asked. Kendra, keeping her composure, replied, "I'm here to focus on leading my team and serving our customers. I trust that the truth will come out." Her measured response earned quiet applause from the staff watching nearby. Later, Jamal approached her. "You handled that like a pro," he said with a grin. Kendra smiled. "Thanks, we've got to keep moving forward." Ethan's desperation. Ethan Whitaker, now backed into a corner, found himself increasingly isolated. The media coverage of the counterclaim had tarnished his reputation, and even his lawyer, Vincent Graves, was beginning to doubt the strength of their case. "This doesn't look good, Ethan," Graves said during a meeting. "The evidence against you is piling up. If this goes to court, you could face serious consequences." Ethan slammed his fist on the table. "I'm not backing down. Bennett's trying to ruin me, and I won't let him." Graves sighed. "You'd better be prepared for a fight." The courtroom drama begins. The legal battle reached its climax in a packed courtroom. The case had become a media spectacle, with reporters lining the streets outside and spectators filling the gallery. Malcolm arrived with his legal team, his expression calm but resolute. Ethan entered shortly after, looking disheveled but defiant. The proceedings began with opening arguments. Ethan's lawyer painted him as a victim of reverse discrimination, while Malcolm's legal team focused on the documented pattern of misconduct under Ethan's leadership. Key witnesses took the stand, including former employees who had suffered under Ethan's management. One by one, they recounted incidents of discrimination and harassment, their voices steady but emotional. "I was passed over for a promotion 3 times. One employee testified. "Ethan told me it was because I didn't fit the image he wanted for the store." Kendra's testimony. The most impactful moment came when Kendra took the stand. She spoke candidly about her experiences, describing the toxic environment Ethan had created and the steps she had taken to rebuild the store. "Under Ethan's leadership, I often felt undervalued and ignored," Kendra said, her voice strong, "but I stayed because I believed in this company's values. When Mr. Bennett gave me the opportunity to lead, I saw it as a chance to prove what we're truly capable of." Ethan's lawyer attempted to discredit her, implying that her promotion was merely a PR move. But Kendra held her ground. "I was promoted because I earned it," she said firmly, "and the results speak for themselves." A turning point. The turning point came when Malcolm's legal team introduced the evidence linking Ethan to the threats against Kendra. The courtroom fell silent as the emails and texts were read aloud, exposing Ethan's malicious intent. When confronted with the evidence, Ethan's composure cracked. "This is all a setup," he shouted, his voice echoing through the courtroom. "Bennett's trying to destroy me." The judge banged the gavel, restoring order. But the damage was done. Ethan's outburst only reinforced the case against him. The verdict. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Ethan was found guilty of defamation, harassment, and workplace misconduct. The judge ordered him to pay damages to Malcolm and Kendra and referred the harassment case to criminal court. As the verdict was read, Ethan slumped in his chair, his face pale. Malcolm, seated nearby, felt a wave of relief but also a renewed sense of responsibility. Aftermath. The media response to the verdict was overwhelming. Malcolm held a press conference to address the outcome. Standing alongside Kendra, "This isn't just a victory for me or Bennett Lux," Malcolm said. "It's a victory for accountability, respect, and inclusion. We must continue to challenge the systems and attitudes that allow discrimination to thrive." Kendra, now officially promoted to store manager, spoke next. "This experience has shown me the power of resilience and the importance of standing up for what's right. I'm proud to be part of a company that lives its values." Cliffhanger. As the press conference ended, Malcolm received a cryptic message on his phone. "This isn't over." He frowned, his mind racing. While Ethan had been defeated, Malcolm knew that deeper battles, against systemic prejudice and injustice, were still ahead. Ripples through the community. The courtroom victory sent shockwaves through the community. For many, it was a symbolic win against systemic racism and workplace discrimination. Social media exploded with hashtags like #JusticeServed and #AccountabilityWins. While articles praising Malcolm Bennett's leadership flooded news outlets. However, the backlash wasn't far behind. Critics argued that Malcolm's actions set a dangerous precedent, framing Ethan's dismissal as a power play rather than a stand for values. Debates erupted on talk shows, with pundits dissecting every aspect of the case. In the heart of Manhattan, protesters and supporters gathered outside the flagship store. Some carried signs reading, "Equality for all," while others displayed messages like, "Malcolm's agenda exposed." Tensions simmered, turning the store into a symbolic battleground for broader societal issues. Kendra's store transformation. Inside the flagship store, Kendra Matthews focused on the team. Despite the chaos outside, she rallied her staff to maintain their professionalism and dedication. "Remember why we're here," Kendra said during a morning meeting. "We're not just selling products. We're representing a brand that stands for something bigger. Let's show the world what we're made of." The team responded with renewed energy, and customers began to take notice. One shopper approached Kendra after a purchase. "I read about everything that's happening," the woman said. "I just want to say, I admire how you're handling it. This store feels different, in the best way." Kendra smiled, her resolve strengthening. "Thank you. That means a lot." Malcolm's continued fight. At headquarters, Malcolm worked tirelessly to manage the fallout. He met with his PR and legal teams to strategize the next steps. Claire, his ever-reliable assistant, summarized the situation during a meeting. "Public sentiment is largely in our favor," she said, "but the critics are vocal. Some are calling for boycotts, claiming the company's actions were too harsh." Malcolm sighed, leaning back in his chair. "We can't please everyone," he said, "but we can stay true to our values. Let's focus on transparency, release statements about our ongoing efforts to improve workplace culture, and highlight Kendra's success. This isn't just about damage control, it's about setting an example." Amanda, his lead attorney, chimed in. "The legal victory gives us a strong foundation. Now we need to show that we're building something better on it." The broader community steps in. Malcolm's actions inspired discussions beyond the business world. Advocacy groups reached out, commending his stand against workplace discrimination. One prominent civil rights leader, Dr. Angela Warren, requested a meeting with Malcolm to discuss potential collaborations. During their meeting, Dr. Warren said, "Your case has sparked conversations that we've needed for decades. But the work doesn't stop here. Would you consider partnering with us to create programs that address workplace inequality on a broader scale?" Malcolm agreed, seeing an opportunity to extend his impact. Together, they announced the launch of the Bennett Initiative, a nonprofit aimed at fostering diversity and inclusion in the workplace through training programs, scholarships, and advocacy. Ethan's continued attempts. Despite his courtroom defeat, Ethan Whitaker wasn't finished. He began collaborating with fringe groups and online platforms to spread a narrative of being a victim of corporate overreach. Through videos and interviews, he painted himself as a whistleblower exposing a hidden agenda within Bennett Lux. His campaign gained traction in certain circles. leading to more protests outside the flagship store and even threats directed at Malcolm and Kendra. The hostility escalated when a group of protesters attempted to disrupt a company event promoting the Bennett initiative. Security intervened, but the incident left Kendra shaken. That evening, Malcolm called her. "I'm sorry you're going through this," he said, "but I need you to know. You're not alone. We'll get through this together." "I know," Kendra replied, "and I'm not backing down." The media frenzy. As the situation grew more intense, Malcolm agreed to a televised interview to address the controversy. Sitting across from a respected journalist, he spoke candidly about the lawsuit, his values, and the challenges of leading a business in a polarized climate. "Leadership isn't about making everyone happy," Malcolm said during the interview. "It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. I didn't start Bennett Lux to sell handbags. I started it to create something meaningful, a company that stands for excellence, inclusion, and respect." The interview struck a chord with many viewers, earning praise for Malcolm's honesty and integrity. However, it also reignited debates, keeping the story in the headlines. Kendra's rising influence. Back at the flagship store, Kendra continued to shine. Under her leadership, the store's sales surged, and customer satisfaction ratings reached an all-time high. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. Malcolm invited her to speak at a company-wide event celebrating Bennett Lux's milestones. During her speech, Kendra shared her journey. "When I first started here, I felt invisible," she said, "but Mr. Bennett gave me a chance to lead, and it's changed my life. My goal is to pay that forward, to make sure no one in this company ever feels overlooked." Her words resonated deeply, earning a standing ovation. Malcolm watched from the sidelines, proud of how far she had come. Cliffhanger. As the event concluded, Malcolm received another anonymous message. "You may have won the battle, but the war isn't over." Malcolm showed the message to Claire, who frowned. "Do you think it's Ethan?" "Maybe," Malcolm replied, his expression unreadable. "Or maybe it's someone worse." He tucked the phone into his pocket, his mind racing. While the company had made significant strides, Malcolm knew the road ahead would be anything but smooth. The criminal charges. Following the counterclaim, Ethan Whitaker's actions were referred to criminal court for harassment and workplace misconduct. As the investigation unfolded, more victims came forward with allegations of discriminatory practices and harassment during Ethan's tenure. The mounting evidence made headlines, painting Ethan not as a victim but as a deeply flawed individual who had long abused his position of power. For Malcolm Bennett, the stakes were higher than ever. The outcome of this trial wasn't just about justice for Kendra or vindicating himself. It was about setting a precedent that integrity and accountability mattered, no matter one's status. The courtroom atmosphere. The criminal trial drew widespread attention, with reporters packing the courtroom and the public following every twist. Malcolm and Kendra attended the proceedings, both determined to see the case through. Ethan arrived looking worn, his confidence visibly shaken. His once polished demeanor had given way to desperation. Vincent Graves, his lawyer, tried to maintain an air of control, but even he seemed less sure of their chances. The prosecution, led by the formidable district attorney Rachel Monroe, wasted no time laying out their case. Monroe was a sharp, eloquent attorney known for taking on high-profile cases. In her opening statement, she emphasized the broader implications of Ethan's actions. "This case is not just about one man's abuse of power," Monroe said, her voice resonating in the silent courtroom. "It's about a pattern of behavior that has no place in any workplace, a pattern that has caused harm to countless individuals." Key witnesses take the stand. The prosecution called several former employees to testify, each sharing harrowing accounts of Ethan's behavior. Their stories painted a clear picture of a toxic environment fueled by Ethan's discriminatory attitudes. "I worked harder than anyone else on that team," one witness said, her voice trembling, "but Ethan always found reasons to criticize me, reasons that had nothing to do with my performance and everything to do with the color of my skin." Another witness detailed the climate of fear Ethan created. "He made it clear that speaking out would cost us our jobs." The witness said, "So, most of us stayed quiet." Kendra's testimony. When Kendra Matthews took the stand, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. She spoke calmly and confidently, recounting her experiences with Ethan and the threats she had faced after her promotion. "I wasn't just fighting to lead the store," Kendra said. I was fighting to prove that we all deserve respect, no matter where we come from or what we look like. Graves attempted to discredit her, suggesting she was exaggerating her claims for personal gain. But Kendra held her ground. I don't need to exaggerate, she said firmly. The evidence speaks for itself. The turning point: damning evidence. The prosecution introduced the most damning evidence, a series of emails and text messages between Ethan and his confidants, detailing his plans to sabotage Kendra and intimidate Malcolm. The messages revealed Ethan's blatant racism and his attempts to rally others against them. The courtroom fell silent as the messages were read aloud. Ethan's lawyer visibly flinched, knowing the case was slipping through his fingers. When Ethan took the stand in his defense, his demeanor was combative. He denied the allegations, claiming the messages were taken out of context. But under cross-examination by Monroe, his story unraveled. You expect this court to believe that these messages, where you referred to your coworkers using racial slurs and discussed leaving threatening notes, were jokes? Monroe asked, her tone icy. Ethan stammered, his face reddening. I didn't mean for anyone to take them seriously. So, you're admitting you wrote them? Monroe pressed. Ethan hesitated, his silence speaking volumes. The verdict. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty on all counts. Ethan was sentenced to several years in prison for harassment and intimidation, along with hefty fines for his misconduct. As the verdict was read, Ethan sat motionless, his once arrogant demeanor replaced by defeat. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, the weight of the decision sinking in. Public reaction. The trial's outcome sparked widespread conversations about workplace ethics, racism, and accountability. Advocacy groups praised the verdict as a step toward justice, while others criticized the system for taking so long to act. Malcolm held a press conference shortly after the trial. Standing beside Kendra, he addressed the media with conviction. This verdict is more than a victory for us. It's a message to anyone who thinks they can use their position to harm others. We won't tolerate discrimination or abuse. And we'll continue fighting for a world where respect and inclusion are the norm. Ethan's fallout. Ethan's conviction destroyed his reputation and left him ostracized. Former allies distanced themselves, and his attempts to rebuild his image were met with widespread rejection. His downfall served as a cautionary tale for others in positions of power. Cliffhanger. As the dust settled, Malcolm received an unexpected call from a high-ranking corporate executive. The voice on the other end was smooth but cryptic. Mr. Bennett, I have information you might find interesting. Ethan wasn't acting alone. Malcolm frowned. Who are you? Let's just say I'm someone who believes in justice. Meet me tomorrow. I'll send the details. Malcolm hung up, his mind racing. While the trial was over, it seemed the battle was far from finished. The mysterious informant. The following day, Malcolm Bennett arrived at an upscale cafe in Midtown Manhattan, scanning the room for the informant. A middle-aged man in a sharp suit, with salt and pepper hair and piercing gray eyes, waved him over. The man introduced himself as Richard Caldwell, a former executive from a rival luxury retail chain. You don't know me, Mr. Bennett, Caldwell began, but I've been following your case. What Ethan did wasn't just a personal vendetta, it was part of a larger agenda. Malcolm frowned. What agenda? Caldwell leaned in, his voice low. There are people in this industry, powerful people, who don't want to see someone like you succeed. Ethan wasn't smart enough to orchestrate this on his own. He was being used. Malcolm studied Caldwell carefully. Why are you telling me this? Because I've been in their circle, Caldwell admitted, and I've seen how they operate. But I've also seen what you've built. And frankly, I respect it. These people want to tear it down. The paper trail. Caldwell handed Malcolm a folder containing documents, financial records, email correspondences, and meeting notes. The evidence pointed to a group of executives from various luxury brands and industry insiders who had been quietly working to undermine Bennett Luxe's reputation. Ethan's lawsuit and subsequent actions had been encouraged and funded by this shadowy network. These people see you as a threat, Caldwell explained. Your company's rise challenges the status quo. And they don't like it. They used Ethan as a pawn. But they won't stop there. Malcolm's jaw tightened as he flipped through the pages. If this is true, they've not only attacked me, they've attacked everything this company stands for. It's more than true, Caldwell said, and if you're not careful, They'll come at you again. Kendra's progress amid the chaos. While Malcolm delved into the conspiracy, Kendra continued to thrive in her role as manager. The flagship store had become a model of success, with sales soaring and customer feedback overwhelmingly positive. Kendra's initiatives, including diversity training and team-building exercises, had transformed the staff into a cohesive unit. One afternoon, Malcolm visited the store. Observing the bustling activity, he pulled Kendra aside, his expression proud. "You've done an incredible job here," he said. "This store is everything I hoped it would be, and that's because of you." Kendra smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Bennett, but I couldn't have done it without your support." Exposing the conspiracy, Malcolm convened a meeting with his legal and PR teams to discuss the evidence Caldwell had provided. Amanda Rivers, his lead attorney, reviewed the documents thoroughly. "This is explosive," Amanda said. "If we can prove these connections, we're not just talking about a smear campaign, we're talking about collusion, defamation, and possibly illegal financial activities." Claire, Malcolm's assistant, added, "The PR angle is just as critical. If we handle this right, we can turn this into a defining moment for the company." Malcolm nodded. "Let's move forward carefully. I want to expose the truth, but I also want to ensure we maintain our integrity." Public revelation. Malcolm decided to release the information strategically, starting with an exclusive interview with a respected investigative journalist. During the interview, he laid out the details of the conspiracy, providing evidence and emphasizing the broader implications for the industry. "This isn't just about Bennett Lux," Malcolm said. "It's about an industry that has long been dominated by exclusionary practices. If we want true progress, we need to confront these challenges head-on." The story dominated the news cycle, with public outrage directed at the implicated parties. Advocacy groups and activists rallied around Malcolm, calling for systemic reform in the luxury retail industry. The industry's response. The fallout was immediate. Several executives named in the exposé resigned or faced legal action. Brands associated with the conspiracy issued public apologies, but their reputations were severely damaged. Meanwhile, Bennett Lux received an outpouring of support. Customers flocked to the stores. Sales skyrocketed, and Malcolm's leadership was widely praised as courageous and principled. Kendra's growing role. Amid the upheaval, Kendra's influence within the company continued to grow. Malcolm invited her to join the executive leadership team, a move that symbolized the company's commitment to diversity and inclusion. "Kendra," Malcolm said during their meeting, "you've proven yourself time and time again. Your vision and leadership are exactly what this company needs. Are you ready for this next step?" Kendra beamed. "I am, and thank you for believing in me." Cliffhanger. As Malcolm and Kendra celebrated their victories, a package arrived at Malcolm's office. Inside was a single piece of paper with a chilling message. "You think it's over? It's just beginning." Malcolm showed the note to Claire, his expression grim. "They're not going to stop." Claire nodded. "Then neither will we." Malcolm placed the note in his desk drawer, his resolve unshaken. While the immediate threat had been neutralized, he knew the fight for justice and equality was far from over. Rebuilding the foundation. Malcolm Bennett sat in his penthouse, the skyline of New York City glowing under the evening lights. The threatening note lay on his desk, its ominous message a reminder that his fight was far from over. But Malcolm wasn't deterred. Instead, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The victories in court and the exposure of the conspiracy had bolstered his resolve. Bennett Lux had become more than a luxury brand. It was now a symbol of resilience and a beacon for justice. Malcolm called Kendra that evening. "Are you ready for the next step?" he asked. Kendra's voice carried quiet confidence. "Always. A plan for lasting change." The next morning, Malcolm convened a meeting with his leadership team to outline their plan for systemic reform, both within Bennett Lux and the broader industry. Kendra, now officially a member of the executive team, sat beside him at the table. "This isn't just about recovering from the damage," Malcolm began. "It's about building something better, something that can't be torn down by threats or sabotage. We're going to set new standards for what it means to lead with integrity." Amanda Rivers, Malcolm's lead attorney, suggested leveraging the company's newfound influence to push for industry-wide change. "We could lobby for legislation to protect workers from discrimination and harassment, especially in luxury retail." Claire chimed in, "And we should expand the Bennett Initiative. Let's invest in mentoring programs and scholarships to diversify the talent pool in this industry." Malcolm nodded. "Let's do it. And let's make sure this isn't just a temporary fix, it needs to be a movement." The Bennett Initiative expands. Under Malcolm and Kendra's leadership, the Bennett Initiative grew into a powerful force for change. The initiative launched nationwide training programs for companies, offering tools to create inclusive workplaces. It also provided scholarships for underrepresented groups pursuing careers in business, fashion, and retail. At one event hosted by the initiative, Kendra gave a speech that captivated the audience. "Change isn't comfortable, but it's necessary," she said. "I stand here today because someone believed in me and gave me a chance. Now, it's our turn to open doors for others." Her words resonated, inspiring attendees to pledge their support. By the end of the event, the Bennett Initiative had secured partnerships with several major brands, marking a turning point in the industry. Ethan's final downfall. Meanwhile, Ethan Whitaker's life spiraled further out of control. His attempts to rebuild his reputation were thwarted by the overwhelming evidence of his misconduct. Former allies continued to distance themselves, and he became a pariah in both professional and social circles. Ethan reached out to Malcolm in a last-ditch effort to salvage something of his former life. He arrived uninvited at Bennett Luxe headquarters, demanding a meeting. Malcolm agreed, more out of curiosity than obligation. Sitting across from Ethan in the conference room, Malcolm listened as Ethan pleaded for forgiveness. "I lost everything," Ethan said, his voice shaky. "I made mistakes, but I didn't deserve this." Malcolm's expression remained impassive. "You didn't just make mistakes, Ethan. You made choices that hurt people. Choices rooted in prejudice and entitlement. Forgiveness doesn't erase accountability." Ethan's shoulders sagged, realizing he would find no sympathy here. Malcolm stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "If you truly want redemption, start by acknowledging the harm you caused, and fixing it." A community transformed. Back at the flagship store, Kendrick continued to lead by example. Under her guidance, the store became a hub of positivity and excellence. Employees who once doubted her now admired her leadership, and customers frequently praised the store's inclusive atmosphere. One day, a young black woman approached Kendra after a purchase. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said. "Seeing someone like you in charge, it gives me hope." Kendra smiled warmly. "Thank you for saying that. Remember, hope is just the beginning. The real power comes when we turn it into action." Facing new challenges, even as Bennett Luxe thrived, Malcolm knew the threats against him weren't over. The cryptic note he'd received hinted at larger forces still at play. One evening, as he worked late in his office, Claire entered with a worried expression. "I've been tracking chatter about that group behind Ethan," she said. "They're regrouping. It's not over." Malcolm leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. "Then we stay vigilant. They want us to fail because they fear change. But we won't give them that satisfaction." Climactic confrontation. The final confrontation came unexpectedly. A whistleblower from within the conspirators' ranks contacted Malcolm, offering crucial evidence of ongoing sabotage attempts against Bennett Luxe. Malcolm worked with authorities to expose the group, leading to a dramatic raid on their operations. The evidence uncovered not only vindicated Malcolm but also revealed the extent of corruption within the luxury industry. The fallout was massive, resulting in arrests and a sweeping reform movement. The victory speech. At a press conference following the raid, Malcolm stood beside Kendra, Claire, and Amanda. Cameras flashed as he addressed the crowd. "This isn't just my victory, it's our victory," Malcolm said. "It's proof that integrity can triumph over greed, that respect can conquer prejudice, and that when we stand together, we can achieve anything." Kendra stepped forward, her voice steady and inspiring. "This journey has taught me that leadership isn't about titles, it's about courage. And I promise to keep fighting for a better future. Not just for this company, but for everyone." The crowd erupted into applause, the moment symbolizing the dawn of a new era. Epilogue. A legacy of hope. Months later, Malcolm visited the flagship store, now a vibrant and welcoming space. Kendra greeted him with a smile, the staff bustling with energy around them. "You've done amazing work," Malcolm said. "This store is everything I dreamed it could be, and more." Kendra beamed. "We're just getting started." As Malcolm walked out into the bustling streets of New York, he felt a deep sense of pride. The fight had been long and grueling, But it was worth it. Bennett Lux wasn't just a brand anymore, it was a movement. A legacy of hope. And a testament to the power of resilience and justice. The story ends with a simple but powerful message. The fight for equality is never truly over, but with courage, integrity, and unity, we can always move closer to the world we want to see.